Awesome, Helena. Looks like we just got the room opened up for today's edition of the Trade of the Day Live. Super excited to be here, sitting down with you. An
Same
interesting week in
here.
the markets. Not a ton going on the front of macroeconomic data, but definitely some market moving events. Being fairly fresh off of the markets. All three major indexes setting new all-time highs over the past week. On several different occasions. There's a lot going on, but a lot to break down, and really excited to be here. And looks like we have some great folks in the room. I see Brian, I see Brad, Doug, Holland, Michael, Mary. Welcome in, everybody. We're super excited to have you here, and just go ahead and say hello in the chat if you want to. Always love to hear from you all watching at home. But Helene, any thoughts before we get started?
No, nothing.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the first couple charts here. I'm going to take over the screen share. Um, and let me see. Looks like, Helene, you may have to enable my screen sharing here. It looks like I hadn't gotten that set up quite yet. So sorry, bear with us just 1 second there, everybody. And we should be good to go. All right. Looks like I can share it now. So here we go. So everybody should be able to see my screen here. But as we like to start these calls off, we always like to just kind of take a 10,000 foot, top-down view of the market, just to, kind of take the temperature and get a feel and a read on just what the markets are doing at the index level. Now, of course, as I said, we have hit new all-time highs with both the S&P 500, the Nasdaq, and now actually the Dow recently. In just the past week. So we've got new all-time highs. That, of course, is a great indication of the long-term trends in the market. And the long-term trends are still very full, very much fully intact. We can see the 50-day moving average still trading above our 200-day. The index is certainly well above that right there. But even though we do have that really strong long-term trend intact right now, of course, stocks you probably have seen, have been pulling back. We're on a just say hypothetically, should the market close right now? Of course, it's not. We have a lot of trading left in the day, but if the market closed right now, we would be booking a 3-day losing trend. So, we are, starting to see at the index level stocks come in a little bit, consolidate, and some profit taking occurring. And I think more so what is happening kind of under the hood and under the surface of this market is that we're starting to see a significant bit of market rotation occurring. We've had some significant momentum leading this market higher for, roughly 5 to 6 months now, coming off those April lows. You probably know many of the stocks that have been the leaders, of course, the mega cap tech stocks, the Palantirs, the Robinhoods, these stocks that have just been flying higher, just making new high after new high after new high, almost, just unrelenting, just moving higher. And so you're starting to see some of the weakness in those stocks. Some of those stocks starting to come in and cool off a bit, and some rotation out of those, those market leaders, those, major growth names, the big momentum stocks. It's rotating out of those into the other pockets of the market, that have been more laggards, and you're starting to see some uptick activity there. So just wanted to briefly cover this. One thing I did want to point out before I show you some of the indications of why we're actually like we're really seeing this momentum, or excuse me, this rotation play out on the charts. Down here below, this is one thing I want to point out. This is a VIX. So of course, up here we're looking at the S&P 500. Down here below, this is a chart of the VIX just overlaid for the same period, and you can see the VIX currently. It is this is about as low as the VIX really ever gets. It's down to just about 15 on the VIX, and I think this is one indication that we could be seeing some a bit of complacency in the short term in the markets here. Typically, if you look back, if you were to zoom this chart out and look back, a year, 2 years, generally when it starts getting down to this level of 15, that's while of course it's nice to have the VIX low and market sentiment really high. Every once in a while, the VIX gets a little too low. Investors get a little too complacent, and we do get a bit of a pullback. Just like you can see, we got down to roughly that 15 level here. That's when we had the bit of a pullback to start the month, just earlier this month in August. You can see just every time we get a little bit of a lift, when this VIX gets a little bit too low, get a little too complacent in markets, we're kind of setting up for a bit of a pullback, and I think we could be in that setup right now. Not that, I don't think we're at risk of a trend change. Just some more kind of consolidation trading, choppy trading, while this seasonality, this market rotation, things like this kind of play out. Of course, there's a lot riding on the Fed's Jackson Hole meeting, and particularly Chair Powell's speech on Friday. So there's a lot of things that are kind of, all in the wash together, kind of trying to sort themselves out in the markets. And because of that, that's why I think you're starting to see a lot of this rotation and, at least at the index level and some of these market leaders through thus far this year, the big high flying momentum names, I think you're starting to see some profit taking in those names. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next uh, setup they want to show here, or rather it's a bar chart. And so this is actually looking at just today's performance. So this is the 1 day performance of all of the S&P 500 spider sector ETFs. And this is a really fun tool. It's really easy to use. You just go on their website, and it's a really easy way to gauge what's working in these various time periods shown up here. So whether you want to look just today, what's working well, or on the flip side, perhaps what's not working quite well. And again, you can go out over a week, a month, 6 months, year to date, whatever time frame you're looking at. Now, you can clearly see that the vast majority of the sectors are up today. You can see particularly a lot of sectors that have been somewhat laggards on the year. You can see the real estate sector, consumer staples. These are some of the ones that have been the most significant laggards over this strong bullish run we've had, in the past 5, 6 months. Well, they're the strongest performance of the market today. And then, of course, you see things like healthcare, you're seeing materials. So you're seeing a lot of pockets of the market that had not been these leaders, but you're starting to see some nice outperformance, particularly today. And you can see the market leaders, on the other hand, just scratch energy, because energy is kind of a tough sector right now. But specifically, you can see the comm services and XLK. Those two are the really tech-heavy sectors. They have all these mega cap tech names in them, high-flying momentum names like a Palantir. You can see that the tech sector is down over a little bit more than 1% today. Comm services is down just about 1% as well. And so this is really indicative of that market rotation that we're seeing, specifically, really, really making itself clear today. But we've actually been seeing this trend play out for about a week now. We've seen some really early signs of this. And that's what brings me to the next chart we're going to look at right here. So this chart here, it's one, if you've been on TOD Live in the past, you've probably seen Helene and I look at these charts. And what this is a ratio chart, and it's a ratio specifically between the S&P 500 equal weighted index, and it's the ratio, it's being divided by the S&P 500 headline index. So this is looking, the only, just the layman's version of this explanation is that simply why we would look at a chart like this is that we want to see what is the outperformance or the relative performance of one compared to another. So in this case, we're trying to figure out what is the performance of the S&P equal weighted 500 index compared to the S&P 500 headline index. So the headline, of course, being the one that you always see when you log onto a CNBC or Wall Street Journal, wherever you look at your financial news. So when in this case, since our ratio is the equal weight divided by the headline index, when you start to see this line start to slope up, as it has over a little more than the past week, you can see, had a kind of a big reversal day, putting this short-term bottom in right here. And ever since we've been trending up on this relative performance chart, that is signaling that the S&P 500 equal weight, at least over the past week and a half, roughly week, has been outperforming the headline S&P 500 index. So the reason that's happening is because you're starting to see some slowing momentum, some profit taking, some investors kind of pumping the brakes on some of these momentum stocks, like, again, the mega cap techs, the high flying momentums that have really been the market leaders coming out of that bottom, just like we were talking about. So again, this is really indicative of that market rotation that we're noticing, again, beginning to take shape. And again, this is an early sign. Of course, you can see the overarching trend over the past 3 months. This line has been sloping down, of course, because, over this entire period here, those momentum names were absolutely crushing it. They were driving a lot of the market's returns. But seeing, this, a little more than a week, it's, 6 days now that we've started to see a nice outperformance, and a potential early breakout in the relative performance of the equal weight S&P 500 compared to the typical S&P 500 index. So, Helene, I was just telling everyone how, we're starting to see a lot of signs across the market of market rotation happening out of some of these leaders, out of the momentum names, into some of the other pockets of the market, that have been laggards year to date. And Helene, I think you can probably go ahead and speak a little bit more about that. And this chart right here, I know we promised the folks in the Telegram channel last night, we saw a really kind of eye-popping move in one of these, market leaders from the past couple months, and it's Meta. We saw a significant move in them yesterday, continuing today. So, what are you seeing here, and what are your thoughts on this stock right now?
Yeah, no, I think exactly what you said about seeing rotation in the market right now. Because those leaders had led out of that April correction, and they really took off. I mean, they were in tremendous bull trends, and those trends can only last but so long. Like, there's only so high a stock can continue going straight up before it has to come back down. And when those stocks and sectors come back down, it's not like the money is leaving the market, it's just shifting into different areas of the market. And so that's what we're seeing, as you said, with this rotation. And that's what we're seeing with Meta. You can see from those April lows, they just had this tremendous run,
Yeah.
almost straight up. That is a V-shaped recovery if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, no kidding.
And now it's cooling off. I mean, significant steps lower in the last couple of trading days. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see trading lower from here and further consolidation. I wouldn't expect a full reversal of the trend per se, but I would expect some consolidation and sideways movement for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think just while some of this rotation is settling out, of course, if you're going to see market rotation, and again, as we well know, Helene, you and I, we know that, market rotation is some of the lifeblood in a very healthy bull market. You need to see that for it to, have legs to be extended over a long period of time. There's only so long that the market leaders and momentum can, continue to carry the burden of the whole market and lead and lead. And, they can do it for quite a long time, but eventually you have to see kind of some of those laggards start to, start perform, start coming up from the rear, and show some signs of life themselves. And typically, when that happens, that's when you see that market rotation. You're going to see some profit taking in those market leaders, just such as Meta here. There's plenty of other names out there. You've seen it recently in Netflix, a Spotify. I mean, some of those stocks have recovered a bit, but you're seeing it more in the mega caps. If you pulled up a chart of Microsoft right now, it's a very similar story. So. While just a couple days ago, Meta was making new all-time highs. It's performed really, really strongly after its recent earnings report. That's what this major gap up in the stock was right here. But now, you're starting to see some of this rotation. Investors taking some profits, putting that money to work in other pockets of the market. Just looking at the chart right here, I'm not sure that the long-term trend in Meta is going to be broken. I think it still has a durable long-term trend. But some of the short-term trend and short-term trading activity, definitely gives me a little bit of pause in this stock right here. It's getting down to that gap that, when it had the post-earnings gap up that I just pointed out. And Helene, oftentimes when we see, a stock, after it has a gap and then it starts to trade back down, a lot of times those gaps end up getting filled on the charts. So it's kind of getting to the danger zone on this one right here for Meta. So definitely one to be watching very closely. I don't think that I would be looking to enter a trade on Meta right now. I would probably give it at least a couple more days to settle out. Again, it's near its session lows today, and it's kind of been a falling knife over the past couple days. So, definitely it's pulled back. It's, a little lower risk entry point than when it was trading over 790 just a couple days ago. But still, it looks like this one, particularly if you look at the RSI chart, it is just almost a straight line down. That's indicating really significant downside momentum right now. It has not quite reached an oversold point either. It's only at the middle Keltner channel. Its RSI, the 5-day RSI, is not even below 30 at this point. So, if you continue, to see some pretty significant profit taking during this rotation, you could see that one go back down, and try and test out some of these support levels, around 720, down around this level. So, Helene, anything else? Any other thoughts on these charts or the mega cap
Yeah.
tech, momentum
No,
names?
I specifically looking at Meta, I couldn't agree more with just being hesitant to enter anything with it. And the thing that I want to point out is that, of course, we can't ignore that earnings gap up. That was a huge move. But before then, Meta was in basically a 2 month consolidation period. They
Yep.
were in a pretty tight range, and it was clear that momentum was lost on the stock. It was one that the day before that earnings that the earnings were reported, I would not have entered that position. That would have been telling me that that current trading right before then, the momentum's gone, stay away. If the trend continues or goes back to seeing like that strong bullish trend again, maybe then consider it. But before that earnings call, I would have stayed away from Meta. And so we saw that bump up, we saw that trade higher, but now we're seeing that deflation once again. The momentum is not there in Meta right now. And I would need to see some signs that, the bull trend has returned before I get back in. And that's my positioning as a momentum trader. I'm looking for momentum, and I'm just not seeing it at the moment.
Yep, exactly. And just to kind of explain, looking at one of the earlier charts, Elaine, I was looking at the ratio chart between the S&P 500 equal weight and the headline. If you were to, set up a ratio chart between this now, of course, over the past, 3, 4 months, Meta would be vastly outperforming many other pockets of the market. But if you're looking at the momentum now of what's happened in the last couple of days and continuing to happen throughout today's trading, you're starting to see that reverse. You're seeing that momentum, you know, change the other direction. It's starting to have some short-term momentum to the downside. So, totally agree with you, Helene. As you were saying, leading into that earnings report, it was really kind of in a, it was still a pretty wide range given the share price of Meta. It's a pretty high price stock, but, it really hadn't moved all that much throughout June and July. It was, kind of stuck. It had a ceiling on it, right around 730 roughly. And the earnings were able to push it above that level. But, going into that period, if you had existing positions for Meta, it probably would have been safe to, hold those options positions. Obviously there's a lot of different strategies out there, but talking about, bullish long positions, if you had been holding them for a long time, but, when you start to see that, fizzling out in momentum like you're seeing here, that's not really telling us like, oh man, this looks like a great entry point because of that momentum slowing. And that's, again, that's indicative of what we're seeing again right now in this name and many other of the market leaders right now, seeing a little bit of cooling off. And, Helene, to be perfectly honest, I don't love seasonality as an indicator in the markets, but it's talked about so much. Sometimes people, they kind of speak things into a reality, at least for a time being. Obviously, in the end of the day, the fundamentals and the technicals are going to win out in the market. But if people talk about the seasonality so much and saying, oh, August and September, they have to be these bad months. Well, there's going to be at least some number of people out there that are going to listen to that and start profit taking in advance, being nervous of that, whatever it may be. So, this would track right along, with the historical of, record of the upcoming, month and a half being some of the historical worst trading for the markets, just performance wise. So, seeing some of that seasonality play out would not be the most surprising thing either.
Totally agree. Totally agree. I think it's a good time, Lane, now to jump into our trades.
Yep, I totally agree. So, kind of sticking with the theme of the, market rotation that we're seeing play out right now, over the, past little more than a week and, particularly in today's trading, as we were talking about earlier, with the, significant outperformance of some of the laggard pockets of the market this year. That's how it landed on my trade here. And it's specifically for O'Reilly Automotive, ticker is ORLY. And, of course, looking at this chart right here, we can see the momentum has certainly not fizzled out in this stock right here. We did have a consolidation period through roughly April through July. O'Reilly was essentially just trading sideways. It was, trading, the range in the trading started tightening down and tightening down. And then it finally broke out to the upside just a little more than a month ago. You can see the stock started to get picking up some momentum in early June. We got a nice breakout on our trend line indicator here. We can see our 21-day EMA, that's a red line, having that bullish convergence crossing above our 63-day EMA right there. So printing a fresh buy signal just in the first trading week of July. Again, just a little more than a month ago. And you can see just a rapid move higher in this stock. It's had some great momentum over the past month and a half. The stock has, ripped out to new 52-week highs on several different occasions over the past month's worth of trading. It did have a bit of a kind of blow off top here when it got, significantly overbought in the short term. It's pulled back, almost to the middle Keltner channel in the past couple of days trading. But now you can see in today's trading a significant bounce higher. The stock's up about 1.5% today. It looks like it's cooled off, and it looks like more buyers are starting to come back into this stock, pushing it higher. Looks like just a really, really strong setup, and it looks like O'Reilly's poised to go ahead and challenge those current 52-week highs it set just a couple of weeks ago. It's not currently trading above the upper Keltner channel, so it's still within our Keltner channel buy zone, and also the RSI down below. You can see the RSI line is spiking. That's indicating strong positive momentum for the stock. But again, it's also not above 70. So that's signaling again that this is O'Reilly's currently trading at a really attractive entry point for a trade entry. And this stock, it's already reported earnings. So, earnings are kind of already out of the way. It's, not something that we have to worry about in the near term for this one. And so the way I'd look to trade this is actually with a directional call option purchase. And they only have monthly option expirations, Elaine. So I landed on
Okay.
just the upcoming monthly. It's the September 19th. And specifically landed on this one right here. It's the 96 strike call. And so I'm actually going to go ahead and place a contract of this here on the call. It's currently trading at 7.8 points, so $780 to put this trade on. So I'm going to go ahead and put my limit order in there. It's going to go ahead and it's just a day order coming in at 7.8 points, one contract, and going to go ahead and submit that trade right there and anticipate that getting filled here fairly easily. You see it just got filled right there at my midpoint price, 7.8 points. So that was my trade of the day. I thought that one, the chart just looked incredible. Have a nice early breakout, momentum starting to gain or regain in the stock. So really, really was excited about that one.
Yeah, I love the chart, and it's so different, as you had kind of said, from so many of the other charts that we're seeing right now, because a lot of those early momentum stocks that were really leading our upswing off those April lows, they have a V-shaped recovery. And so this one is so different, as you said, because we had that prolonged consolidation period, and now we're seeing that breakout, which tells me that it's an earlier breakout, as you had said, and we should see some more upside from here.
Yep, yep, that's what I got my fingers crossed for. So we'll have to see how it plays out. Well, Helene, I think you had a trade for today too, right?
Yes, I do.
Awesome.
Let
Let's
me
see what
go
you have.
ahead and I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. And I was looking at, oop, let's see, Ulta stock today. Let's see, can you see it? There we
No, I can't see it quite yet. Let me see.
go. Can you see it now?
Let me go ahead and stop my share.
That might, yeah,
There we go.
might be
I can see
it.
it now. Yeah. Everybody,
Okay.
if you can't see Helene's screen, just make sure to post in the chat, and we'll figure out the technical difficulties here.
Yeah, I think it's because we're both sharing, but I think we should be good now. Um,
Yeah.
my stock pick was for Ulta Beauty. This one has just been outperforming. What can I say? It's just a beautiful chart.
Hmm.
Uh, looking at those technicals, I have both the 35-day EMA for a shorter term trend as well as a 200-day moving average for a longer term trend confirmation. Of course, I want to see that 35-day trading above the 200-day. That's what I see. I saw that crossover back in May. And since then, Ulta has continued to trade above those two moving averages, confirming the bullish trend. This is a very classic bull trend that we like to see on our team. A series of higher highs and higher lows over the last couple of months, which I can point out right here, the July high, late July high, a new August high, higher lows, that late June low, a higher one mid-July, a higher low early August. So very classic bullish run. Also trading consistently above the middle Keltner channel, something that only stocks in very bullish runs do. And then I really like Ulta's positioning right now. So we know a lot of news is coming out that we're seeing signs of softening in the economy, and Ulta is an interesting position because of the lipstick effect. So when the economy tends to soften, we see that people are buying less luxury goods, but they're still buying small luxuries. These are things that are mood boosters, that, they still want to buy and splurge a little bit, but it's just much smaller items, say like lipstick. And so Ulta kind of is in that little niche of the lipstick effect. So even if we were to see further softening, I would think that Ulta would still stay resilient in the face of that. And so I'm looking at a call option debit spread because of the cost of Ulta. They're $500 per share. So, I'd like to, instead of doing a call option purchase, which would be very expensive, I'd be doing a call option debit spread specifically for September 19th. I'm looking at the 475, 485 strike call option spread. It's trading right around 8 points. At 8 points, I'd have a 25% profit potential on the position. Additionally, this gives me a tremendous amount of downside protection. The break even on this would be 483.05 right now. So that means that as long as Ulta is trading above 483.05 at option expiration, I'd be making money on this trade. And just to look at that level on the chart, 483.05, that is just a tick below the lower Keltner channel right there. So great downside protection on this trade, but also provides upside in a month to make about 25%. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to enter this trade at 8:05 and I will see if I get filled. It says low likelihood. I might bump it up to 8:10, probably be the highest I would want to go. So I'll submit it and I will see if I get filled there.
Awesome. Yeah, well, Helene, it looks like a really great trade setup there too.
Oh wow, yeah,
Yeah, it
I
looks
got,
like just looks like you just got it filled. Yeah, I know it was a little bit wider bid ask spread on that one, but
yeah.
definitely, it looks like you're able to get it filled at a pretty reasonable price. And
Yep.
like you said, you pointed out on the chart, it's a nice in the money debit spread. It's significantly in the money, so you have some nice downside protection built in while also maintaining that great upside potential in the trade too. So looks like a killer setup there. It's funny enough, it's in the same sector as the trade I pointed out today with O'Reilly. They're both consumer discretionary, and that's been a sector that as we've started seeing some of that market rotation play out over the past week plus. That's one of the places that's been kind of vacuum up and absorbing a lot of that money that's coming out of some of the momentum leaders. A lot of it's going into the discretionary sector, and it's showing up in the price action of these stocks as we've clearly shown today. So great trade.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, folks, I am going to go ahead and post something in the chat here real quick. I'm going to go ahead and send you a link through the chat for you to check this out if you haven't seen this before. But every weekend on Sundays, I do some research over the weekend. I find my top trade setup heading into the upcoming week, and it's something I call it's a video newsletter, and I call it my weekly profit opportunity newsletter, and I send it out to my members every Sunday evening. And again, it features my top trade setup for heading in to the upcoming week. I put together a short video. It's about 7 to 8 minutes long. I explain the full details of the trade, the whole setup. I break it all down, and I spot for you the exact trade setup that I would look to place on that trade. Heading into the new week. I give you how I would manage the trade too, with profit targets, stop losses, things like that. So it's got a lot of great info in there. And the trades they've been working out really, really well for my members that have been following along, getting those alerts. We just had another one this past week. It was the trade for Tractor Supply Co. And it's been up. I think it obviously just came out this past weekend. I think it's up about 30%
Oh wow,
already in just a couple days.
that's awesome.
The trades been putting a lot of work in this for my members. If you haven't checked it out, go ahead and click it in the chat. The link is there, and you actually can check it out for your first month for just only $1. That's the current promo we have going for it right now. You can check out your first month, so you'll get 4 weeks of my trade breakdowns for just $1. That trade I posted last weekend, I'm sure that covered a lot of people's costs for their first month to check it out. So
Yeah, I was gonna say you can pay that off pretty darn quick.
yeah, yeah. Once you get a couple of those trades working out, it can cover the expenses for the newsletter pretty quickly. So if you haven't checked it out, I would love for you all to check out my weekly profit opportunity newsletter. Excuse me. Like I said, been putting a lot of work into that one, and been finding some great trade setups. Of course, not all going to be huge, massive winners, but they've had a pretty great track record lately. So.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I took a look at that track record and it is solid. You are making people money, which is if they're taking those trades, which is great. And they've just been some killer trades and I know oftentimes Monday morning you're like, "Oh, look how well my trade's performing that I shared with everyone." And so it's a great opportunity for people to join in and get that top trade pick from you for just $1 for their first month.
Yep, exactly right. Yep, 100%. And yeah, I think Helena, I have to go back and check the record, but I want to say it's something like 20, it's either 27 out of the last 28 or 28 out of the last 29 trades I've sent out to my members have actually given them an opportunity to profit on that alert, had they actually followed the trade. So
Which is
they have
amazing.
been performing really well, which I've loved to see. And I think we have a couple questions here in the chat here. It looks like you answered Sydney's question. She was asking about your trade, and I see Greg. I think he just asked about mine. So yeah, Greg, my trade it was for O'Reilly. Ticker is ORLY. That's today. That's my trade, and it's the September 19th. And then specifically, I purchased during the call today the 96 strike call. So that was my trade right there. And I see another question coming in here. Let's see. Ifosa, you're asking what's the cost after 1 month. So after the first month, Ifosa, you'll see in the checkout page. But again, the first month is going to be the $1, and every subsequent month after that, it's just $39 a month. And again, even at that level, some of these trades. As they continue to work out, it would, easily cover that price.
Oh
As the
yeah.
trades have been recently. A few of the winners recently have been triple digit winners in just a couple weeks time with some
Easily
really
cover
strong
that
profit.
monthly
Yeah, some really
cost.
strong profit opportunities. So, um, but yeah, that's what the cost is after the first month if you continue to renew it. So I appreciate you asking the question again. I really hope to see you check it out. I always love people being able to get the research I do over the weekend, spotting those opportunities.
Well, Blaine, I think that is everything
I think
here.
so. It looks like Greg asked one more question. He said, so no credit spread. Yeah, no credit spread, Greg. That wasn't my trade. It was just a directional, just buying the call outright. Exactly right. And one more question here too. If Osa was saying how many trades per month? Yeah, the trades per month. It's so you're going to get 4 trades per month. Again, it's going to be just average 4 weeks every month, right? And so it's going to be sending out the one trade every weekend. It's going to be my top trade pick heading into the week. And again, it's not just the trade. You get all the trade details and all the information exactly how to set it up. I walk through exactly how I'd look to set up the specific trade, but also give you all, how I would look to manage the trade too once I had that position on, and some, additional information like that. So, some good info in there too, about that. So yeah, Helene, I think that's just about everything. So
Yeah, I
anything else
think
you want to
so.
cover before we sign off for today?
No, I think that was it. I just want to thank everyone so much for joining us today. We absolutely love doing these Trade of the Day live videos. We love your questions too and your engagement. So I just want to thank you all so much for your time today. And I hope you have a great couple days trading, and we'll be back with you on Thursday.
Yep, exactly right. We'll see you back here Thursday, everybody. Have a great week, and excited to see you back here in a couple days. Take care, everybody.